Hello, I'm Dr. Gemma. Today, Brooke and I are going to tell you about our project Keeping Cats Safe at Home, where we applied a holistic human behaviour change approach to domestic cat management in New South Wales, Australia. Cats cause two separate but related challenges for us in Australia. The first relates to their very refined skills as predators. Unfortunately, we have many small native birds, reptiles, amphibians, and mammals, like this endangered bandicoot, who are very susceptible to cat predation. The second challenge is due to large populations of unowned and unsocialised cats in many parts of Australia. These cats present to our pounds and shelters in their thousands every year, and of course, their offspring, like this little lady who started her life as a stray, but who joined my family 14 years ago. Which brings us to our project, which was funded by a grant from our state government. The aim was to reduce wildlife impacts associated with owned cats mainly by encouraging cat caregivers to prevent their cats from roaming away from home, but also to increase the uptake of other so-called responsible ownership behaviours, like neutering or desexing, as we call it in Australia. Australia is a very big country, and this project was based in the state of New South Wales, which you can see in the figure at the top there. We worked with 11 local governments, so local councils across New South Wales, which we selected to be quite diverse. So we had a mix of very urban councils in Sydney, very remote councils, ones that were on the coast, ones that were inland, ones that were relatively high socioeconomic, and ones that were very low socioeconomic. So a mix of different challenges with cats, where we could try out a mix of different approaches. We based the design of the program on extensive stakeholder consultation and social science research. We did a survey of thousands of cat caregivers in New South Wales, trying to understand what motivates cat management behaviours, particularly around containment. What we found was the main barrier to people keeping their cats contained or preventing them from roaming away from home was their psychological capability. So thinking that preventing their cats from roaming would be too difficult, not being confident to prevent their cats from roaming, not being confident they could meet their cats' needs. Based on that finding, we designed a social marketing campaign to increase psychological capability and also increase motivation of cat caregivers to keep their cats at home. We created a suite of information resources, trying to equip caregivers with the knowledge and the confidence to be able to do that successfully. Not just about containment, information about all aspects of cat care and management, including what to do if you find a cat, how to talk to your neighbours about your cats, what cats need, how they communicate, their behaviour, things like that. We created a website and an email newsletter, again, giving people access to that information. We put together packages of these resources, we distributed them to local stakeholders, particularly local veterinary clinics, cat rehoming organisations, shelters, pounds, in our partner council areas. We also got out into schools, so we put together a suite of resources aimed at primary school aged children, aged up to about 12 years old, where we could go and talk to them about cats, their impacts, and how to care for them. We got out face-to-face in the community too, talking to cat caregivers directly, but also talking to people who talk to caregivers. So things like veterinary industry conferences, talking to council rangers, that sort of thing, trying to get that information out there. And we also ran a social marketing campaign on social media. Content like these. We reached over 3.5 million people across the few years of the project. The content was informational content, also things like DIY activities. It was very engaging. We shared powerful stories, what I like to call the cautionary tales, about cats who've come by an accident and recovered to transition to the safe at home life. We used a lot of competitions as well to drive engagement, but also to create that feeling of creating a social norm and a community of practice of cat caregivers who were doing the behaviours that we were trying to find. We also created a paid advertising campaign, which we screened on catch-up television, on YouTube, and on social media. Now I'm going to loop back to that second cat management challenge of the unowned cats. We knew from our stakeholder consultation that these populations were actually really important when we were thinking about cat owner behaviour, because quite a large proportion of owned cats started their life in this population. So we implemented stray care, targeted desexing programs in areas with large populations of unowned cats, which proved to be the lower socioeconomic areas and also areas where people experience barriers to accessing veterinary services. Across these programs, we desexed over 2,500 cats. The aim was to reduce the numbers of unowned cats. We did that by partnering with the local councils, local veterinary clinics, cat rescue groups to offer free desexing for cats, targeting caregivers of unowned cats and also the cat owners overwhelmed with multiple cats. We incorporated a human behaviour change element into this part of the project as well, using again a social marketing approach. So we were encouraging the whole community, one, to notice the stray cats, and two, to act to make sure they had a home. So not a bit different to just like a TNR program where we're desexing cats returning them. We wanted to really engage with those caregivers, and not just the existing caregivers, but the whole community, to say, look, this is a whole community problem. Let's all work together to make sure these cats have homes. So this is just a still from another animation that we created to capture that message, which you can watch on our website.
Hello, my name is Dr. Brooke Kennedy, and I'm going to give you an overview of how we monitored the Keeping Cats Safe at Home project. This is the total council pound cat intake combined for the councils with stray care desexing programs. You can see a dramatic change from an upwards to a downwards trend after the project commenced in 2021. The number of cats euthanized through council pounds decreased even more dramatically, with Kyogle and Walgett at 100%. There was also a decline in cat-related nuisance complaints, with 7 project councils with at least 40% drop and 4 councils with an over 60% drop. However, as you can see, the Blue Mountains had an increase. We are not quite sure, but this may be because of the increased awareness of issues associated with roaming cats. This area has a relatively small unowned cat population and relatively larger owned roaming cat population. And the community is very engaged with environmental conservation. So there's a limitation of not distinguishing between unowned and stray cats from our owned cats when collecting data on nuisance complaints. We also monitored the ecology of free roaming cats before and after the project. We used transect drives to estimate cat populations, and we also used camera traps to measure when and where cats were roaming. We chose 2 coastal regional councils on the north coast of New South Wales. These are councils 1 and 7 on that earlier map of the state of New South Wales. Transect drives were conducted in residential areas only, and they are shown here in red. Cameras were placed on private property in residential and rural areas across the council area, and they are shown here by those little camera images. We also chose 2 councils in Sydney as well, councils 2 and 4 on that earlier map. Free roaming cat population estimates based on those transect drives showed a decrease in all 3 of the measured councils. Unfortunately, major weather events and logistics prevented the final transect for the Byron Council from occurring. Although there were less cats roaming, there was no significant difference in the predicted occupancy of cats, meaning that although there were less cats, the cats that were still roaming were taking up the same amount of space as before. And they also continued to roam at all hours of the day. These graphs are basically 24-hour clocks and are showing that cats were not roaming at any time of day more than any other time of day. So they were roaming equally at all parts of the day. Meaning that they still had the potential to impact wildlife, including the potential of predation. These graphs show the density of cats and small mammals, plotted against what time of day they were captured on our cameras. The grey areas are showing the amount of time that both groups were active at the same time. In this case, small mammals were defined as all mammals that were smaller than a bandicoot. And for those of you not from Australia, this is what a bandicoot is and looks like, and their size. We did capture cats actually predating on birds on 2 occasions. One of them is pictured here on the left. We also captured multiple events of cats with birds, mammals and reptiles in their mouths, which of course they could have just picked up or they could have predated on them themselves. So there is still a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of cats roaming that are having an impact on our wildlife. We'd like to thank our 11 partner councils for their support throughout our project. We'd also like to acknowledge the veterinary clinics within those councils that partnered with us to deliver those free desexing programs throughout our project. Thank you very much for listening, and I now believe it's time for some questions and answers. Thank you.